All right, Alyssa, before we hop into the session, I'm going to go over a couple things just so I can answer any questions you might have beforehand. Before we got on, I pulled you some oracle cards. We're not going to go over them in the session, but I will send you pictures and guidebook descriptions, and then I'll deeper the level of messaging. And then I asked each one of your chakras what kind of crystals would help them with healing and growth. And then I built you a crystal grid, so I'll send you a picture of that as well. And then I will get the replay of the session to you either this evening or tomorrow. Does that sound okay?
Yep, perfect.
Awesome. Okay. And then I know that we wanted to focus on inner child healing today. And then you left me some notes as far as feeling a little blocked in regards to our spiritual gifts. And one of the reasons is because we know something may have happened, but we don't remember a lot of our childhood. So we're looking for some answers. Is there anything else that has come up between when you booked the session and now that you have specific questions on or things that you want to focus on that you want to add in?
Not in the moment, but I'm sure as they come up, I will just let you know.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Okay. So we'll go ahead and go through the notes of the journey that I went on with your inner children, and then we'll go from there. Okay.
Yeah.
So when I went into your energy field, I asked if there was, and I'm gonna have my eyes closed for some of this because I'm gonna rechannel it. So when I went to your energy field, I asked if there was any inner children that wanted to come forward, if they wanted to help me specifically with figuring out what was going on with your spiritual gifts, or if there was any trauma that has been unresolved that they would like to look at. And then you had what I thought was an 8-year-old come forward, and she was like, I think I'm 7. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay. Right. Cause sometimes they're on like those cusps and it really doesn't matter. It's more about generally like that age. They're a lot younger. And she was like, I think I'm 7. It's very funny. And then a 13-year-old came forward as well. So I said, okay, thank you all for coming forward to journey with me today. And I said, I'm here because Alyssa's having some blocks with her spiritual gifts. And we're thinking that maybe it has to do with something that happened to y'all. And they said, look over there. And I said, what's that? And they showed me this giant eyeball, just like one eyeball. Okay, it was massive that was staring at them.
Mm.
And I said, okay. I said, do y'all want to go check it out? And they were like, no. I said, okay. So I said, this is what we're going to do. I said, because I need to see what it is, right? I said, we're going to build this wall. And so I built this clear, almost like not plexiglass, but something along those lines, right? That they could see me through. And I said, y'all are going to stay on this side, and then I'm going to be over here. Okay. And I said, nothing can come through the glass. And I said, hold on a second. And I split myself into 2. Okay, so there's one on this side and one on this side, and they were like, "How'd you do that?" Because the other version of me was like, "Yeah, that's true. Nothing can come through this glass." Okay, and I said, "Oh, you can do it too." And they're like, "Well, how do we do that?" And like your 7-year-old was like scrunching her face and like trying so hard, and I was like, "You're overcomplicating it." First of all, I said, "Just say split." And she said split, and then there was 2 versions of her, one on the other side of the glass with me and one on the inside of the glass, and then your 13-year-old did it, and I said, "See, it's so simple." And she was like, "Whoa." And she said, "Well, how do I get myself to come back to myself?" And then she did the same thing again, and I was like, "Okay, first of all, don't overcomplicate it." I said, "Just say come back." And she said, "Come back," and then they remerged on the other side of the glass. Okay, so I told them that's what's called bilocating.
Mm.
You might need to know that actually now that I'm thinking about it, because some stuff we're going to get into in a minute about how to help your inner kids feel safer with the ethers. So let me write that so I don't forget, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, by location. Okay, so I walked over to the eye by myself on the side of the glass, and I was like, oh, that's a dragon.
Mm.
That's a giant dragon. Okay. So do you have any experiences with like dragon guides prior? Or like do you use the
Um,
dragon guide or
I know that there's 2 of them that I've worked with. One
Mhm.
I don't know the name of, but it's a she energy, and she's really massive and like multicolor and
Oh,
like
that's probably her then, yeah, because this one's
immense love. When I did a spirit guide meditation and I met her, and I just felt like more love than I had ever felt. Um but my husband came home, he was wherever he was, and I was sleeping, and our bedroom was probably 10 degrees hotter than the rest of the entire
Mm,
house.
yeah.
And he was like,
Okay.
what happened? You know,
What's
he had
happening
no
here?
idea. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, my dragon was here. Like, I have a dragon. And then I think there's a second one, and his name is Morel. And I think he's like a really huge but protector. Like, he's always behind me and like like watching everything
Not
to
like a
like
guard, like a guard, not like a guard talk, but like kind of like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. um, do you know the name of the female dragon?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. Okay. So, this is probably the same dragon that you work with, but sometimes what you can see as a adult is not what your inner children see. They can be seen through a completely different perspective lens, or not at all sometimes, right? Because they're scared. So when I walked over to her, I was like, "Hey, I love what you're doing in here, but the kiddos are scared." Okay, they're terrified of this big giant eye that's watching them in the darkness. Okay. And I said, can you blink your eye and then turn it kaleidoscope colors and with glitter and make it very fun? Okay. So she did that. And then I walked back over to the kids. I was like, does that look scary? And they were like, no. And they're like, that's fine. Okay. And so I said, okay. And I said, do you want to see her? Like the dragon, okay? And your 7-year-old said, no, I'm scared. And I said, okay. I said, how about this? And I walked back over to the dragon. I said, can you shrink down to the size that I can hold you in my hand? And she was like, yeah, I can do that. So she shrunk down and then she turned her whole entire body multicolored.
Mm.
So she wasn't like, what we would typically see with the dragon of like, like the muddier colors, right? So she went in my hand. And then I brought her over to the glass and I showed her to your 7-year-old, and because your 13-year-old wasn't really scared, it was more your 7. And I said, oh, do you want to come over here and see her and play with her? And she was like, yes. And so she came through on the other side, and she said, does she breathe fire? And I said, I don't think that she's a fire dragon. I think that she has some type of healing properties. Like she's more kind of like quantum healing-esque, right? Not so much elemental. But then the dragon started turning purple, and I could see kind of like cracks in her skin where all these violet flames were inside of it. So she's a holder of the violet flame, and I've never seen a violet flame dragon before. So that was really cool. Have you worked with the violet flame before?
Nope.
Okay, so, and what was really funny is I told your 7, I was like, oh, you were right. I was like, I was wrong. I said, she's not an elemental fire dragon, but she is the type of fire dragon. So the violet flame is one of the highest transmuting energies of lower, denser energies. So if you have like a lot of PTSD and trauma, it can help clear those things out. But not just PTSD and trauma, like things that are very deep within your Akasha field that have to do with like karmic rollover lessons and karmic or soul contracts and vows and things like that. Just get real deep in there. So that's what that dragon is there to help you with. Okay, so I would, if I were you, and I can send you some information, start researching about the violet flame.
Mm-hmm.
Because that'll be something that you can channel from that dragon and help other people with. Like she
Okay.
can mentor and teach you how to work with that frequency.
Do you know her name?
I'm gonna get to that in just a second. But yes, because I don't want to push forward until until yes, okay.
I always just want to like have a name to associate everything
Oh yeah,
with,
for sure.
regardless.
Oh yeah, it makes it a lot more tangible and a lot easier, but it is part of the story, so I have to wait to tell you for that part. Okay. So she also had where dragons have the scales on their back. They're like this, right? Those are made out of amethyst.
Mm.
Really, really cool. And amethyst is often utilized in tandem with the violet flame. So there's that as well. Okay. So after I told her that she was right and I was wrong, I said, do you want to see her get bigger? Do you want to see her true size? And she was like, yes. And I said, okay, but I could tell that she was still like a little bit nervous. And I said, well, let's get out of here. Okay. Because we were just in the pitch black dark. I was like, I'd be scared in here too. Okay. I said, "Hey, let's go outside." All right. So we all went out into this like really beautiful field. We were kind of like coming out of this cave kind of scene. And then the dragon got really, really big, like massive, her true size. And we were kind of staring up at her. And I was like, "Are you scared?" And she was like, "No." I said, "Great. Okay." And I said, "Let's do this together." And I said, "We're all going to hold hands." So it was me and your 13 and 7-year-old. And I said, "We're going to get bigger." And so we got massive, the same size as the dragon. And she was like, "Whoa, how did we do that?" It was giving very much Alice in Wonderland when she eats or drinks the drink, right? Or the cookie. I think it was a cookie. Anyway. So I said, things are malleable in the etheric realms. It's all about changing perspective, not just from size, but also thoughts. I said, you can do whatever you want in here. I said, you have what has been scaring her is feeling powerless because she's small. Okay. I mean, like small in stature, but also because she's a child and like other things, right? And she's like, oh, these big, giant, scary things could potentially get me, right? And I was like, you don't have to interact with things that way if you don't want to. I said, you have a lot more power than you have been led to believe, right? So she said, can we do this with any being? Like what we had done with the dragon and made her shrink down. Not made her, but we asked her. But I said, yes, you can do that with anything that comes through in your energetic field ever. You can shrink it down or ask it to, like a spirit guide, anything. Okay. And if it's of the light and it wants to be in your field and help you with different things, right? It'll be like, okay. Like I've done that numerous times throughout my journeys. Okay. So your higher self said what would be really beneficial for her, and not only her, but for yourself or, these different versions, is to set up internal realms for beings to meet you in. And she had like for safety reasons in parentheses. So instead of when you're traversing through the ethers and you're going out in the cosmos to meet different ascended masters, guides, whomever, right? Instead of you going to them, have them come to you. And you need to set up locations with that, or not just her, but multiple inner children if you want, of where do we feel safe? Is it a park? Is it a castle? Is it by the ocean? Whatever that internal scape looks like for you. And then your higher self said to use the terminology, like, meeting me on my turf. It's going to help them feel a lot more grounded when things are coming through, because it's like, oh no, if I'm in my space, I have a little bit more power of the physics of what I'm seeing and perceiving and how I'm interacting with it, even though that's not necessarily the case, because really you can take that and do it at any point. But children work differently with their consciousness, and we want to do the things that we need to do to help them feel safe until they're a little bit more grounded, and then they can release kind of those resources and tools, right? Okay. Questions about that before I move forward?
No, that makes a ton of sense.
Yes. So what do you think an internal realm would look like for you?
It's gonna be like some kind of park, like some natural scape, maybe like a lake, lots of trees everywhere, lots of animals.
Yeah. The more times that you have beings meet you in that realm, like obviously you can have multiples, but the more that they meet you there, it's going to feel safer and safer every time. It's going to be like an anchor point in your consciousness. And so they'll be more open to cosmic beings, ethereal beings, all these spirit guides and masters and things of that nature if you're constantly meeting them in the same place.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So I said, why don't you ask your dragon if she wants to be a guardian in these internal realms, so she can check the different beings that come in before you can see them, right? And before I even finished that sentence, she said, "I want to call her Zoe." I said, "Okay." Like I said, "All right." I said, "You can call her Zoe if you want." So I said, why don't you go over and ask her if she wants to take that role on? And because she's already been doing that though. Like she's already been a guardian protector for you, but the inner children were like scared of her. So she hasn't been able to like do her full job, if that makes sense. And so she ran over to her and she started to ask her, and Zoe like licked her whole entire body, and like all of this saliva and slobber and all this stuff was on her, and she was like, ew. But she was laughing. She thought it was really funny. And while they were doing that, I asked your 13-year-old, I said, why are you here? I love that you're here. Thank you. You know, but you're not scared. I was like, what's going on? And she said, I'm the 7-year-old's guardian.
Oh.
So that happens sometimes. I've seen that in other people's fields where sometimes multiple inner children will have similar wounds or trauma or PTSD or something along those lines that connect them to one another like an energetic cord. So we'll talk about that more in a minute, but they have a together. So she's been watching out over her. So she came forward to help her feel safer while we went through this experience. So blessings to her. We love her for that. Yes. While we were doing the meditation before we started recording, when the part got to the roots of the tree going into the ground, your 7-year-old came forward and she was like, what about the chupacabra? I was like, the chupacabra? What are you talking about? And she was like, it's scary. I was like, okay. And she said, what about the Loch Ness monster? And I was like, what? So what I had suspected before I even connected with your inner children is that there was programming in your energy fields from movies and TV shows and things like that, of just like this mythological lore stuff that's really scary and the unknown, and it's going to come get you, and you know, all this different stuff. So you got some programming running back there, right? That needs to continue to be worked on. And I said, just like we did with the dragon with Zoe over here, I said, do you think that all people are bad? And I use bad for a child consciousness concept. Okay. I said, do you think they're all bad? She was like, no. And I was like, do you think all chupacabra are bad? Do you think all Loch Ness monsters are bad? I said, we may just have one here on Earth. I was like, but that Loch Ness monster came from somewhere else. Okay. there's multiple versions of them. And she was like, I guess not. And I said, what you could do, I said, you could invite one to come in here with your dragon and ask it to shrink down really small and then have a conversation with the chupacabra. Okay. And she was like, oh, okay. She was like, that's what this place is for when we were in that realm. And I was like, yeah, this is a place where you can safely practice your gifts and abilities in a way that makes you feel good. And then your dragon, if anything ever comes in that makes you feel uncomfortable or unsafe, your dragon will just ask it to leave. And she was like, okay. Which was so funny. I was like, I haven't heard chupacabra in forever. It was very random. Okay. Do you have any thing with a chupacabra? Okay, something she saw then when she was younger. Okay. Or heard. She just showed it to me. I was like, what the heck? Okay, so we'll the bilocating. Let me go back to that. So sometimes when I am working with clients or I'm just working with myself and there's inner children and teens involved, and I'm trying to do kind of the process that we're talking about right now of like, hey, I need y'all to watch me but not be involved. I will split myself into two so that they feel grounded still with me, but they can still observe over here. That's probably something that you want to consciously do when you're giving like sessions to people. You don't even have to say it physically. If you're doing kind of like etheric work or even on yourself, when you're traversing through the ethers, you can put up that glass wall like we talked about with your inner children, your teens. Just know that that's available for you, and it's a very good grounder for inner children and teens.
Okay.
Any questions about that?
No,
okay.
Makes a ton of sense.
Okay, cool. Okay. And you can make more than two. You can make as many as they need, right? Like if you have 5 inner children you're working with for something, make 5 of you, and they all get their individual Alyssa.
Okay.
Okay, that's okay. Okay. I will also say when you get deeper into inner child work, sometimes you have inner children and teens that have abandonment wounds that get really kind of upset that you're leaving out of your field because they're like, oh, where are you going? Leave a version of you with them. Then they're much more likely to be, okay, since you're part of you is going to stay in here, right? So you can utilize it in that way as well. Okay, so after we got done with that, I asked both of them, is there anything that they could help you with or that I needed to see? Okay. So this is not graphic necessarily, but it just the imagery was a little bit intense. Was I saw you and you were like grasping your physical human body and you were trying to pull it like this and kind of like stretchy putty, like not Play-Doh, but like slime almost. And I looked at your 7-year-old, I was like, that's kind of scary. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let's see what's going on. So what your higher self was telling me is that you are currently going through a big identity shift, and you are trying to almost like force yourself into this propulsion, and not all of your facets are ready to make that jump, and you are kind of resisting self of allowing yourself to still be in this stage, in this place. And I was talking to your 7-year-old, and I said, what do you think that we could do to help her? You right in the current. And she ran over and gave you like a really big hug, because you were like your energy body was trying to split in two, right? And it was causing like a lot of disruptions. And she said, it's okay. This was your 7-year-old. It's okay if you stay you for a little while longer. She gave you a big hug, which recentered you and it stabilized and you stopped doing that, pulling. And she said, we love you just the way you are. So sometimes we are trying to go on this very accelerated pace because we are concerned for our inner children and our teens, because now we are consciously aware of them. And we're like, oh my God, I need to get all this together. Right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And just like I told you in the voice notes that I sent you, that just because you are not consciously aware of the inner child work that you've been doing, like you're not intentionally sitting there and be like, okay, inner children, let me talk to you, right? That doesn't mean that you're not already doing inner child work. Right? There is a whole stage, or we won't call it a stage, but like a chapter of you even finding what all this PTSD and trauma is, and then working on all of that so that you can get to the level where you're more consciously talking and speaking with your inner children. But that doesn't negate all the other work that you've done. Okay. So what the two of them were saying was like, hey, we're okay. You have already done a massive amount of work. We're just sitting in here waiting to have that more communicative availability with one another. We're not busted down and broken in here. Okay. So they were saying, like, hey, if you need a little bit more time in the identity that you are right now, that's okay. You need to stop beating yourself up, because that's not doing anything for anybody. Okay. So what comes up for you when we say all of these things? And when we say we, I mean more so your higher self.
Yeah, there was totally like I said, I grew up in what I thought was a really beautiful life. Like my parents are still together. We felt very loved. We never felt like there was never drastic feelings of not feeling loved and supported. So in my mind, without ever digging into it, I was like, yeah, it was like butterflies and rainbows. Like I can't just remember parts of it, but like it was great. And then watching a lot of your stuff where it's like, okay, but in the perspective of a young child, like sometimes even telling someone no can like devastate them and cause all this trauma. So like that made me like do this deep dive of, oh, I've just been ignorant and naive. There's these poor little kids that are just so upset.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
But honestly, like, and I shared a little bit working with them, but like they're super sweet. Like I know that they're different versions of me, but they like care at such a deep level.
Oh yeah.
Like even the first experience I had with them, like I thought that I would be taking care of them and they were taking care of me, like
Yeah.
grown adult Alyssa. And they just like were doing the same, like whatever you need to do to make someone feel safe and supported. So it just makes me really happy that they're, even though I thought they were neglected and just like traumatized,
Right.
they have some things going on, but like overall, they're just excited to be part of the journey, you know, and super sweet and wanting everything to go really well.
Yeah, overall, when I read your inners, you feel like, yeah, there's probably things that happened in your childhood that created certain behavioral patterns or triggers or, blocks or, whatever you want to call them, right? But as a whole, when I was in there, I was like, there's not like a whole lot of like wacky stuff going on in here, right? They seem pretty even killed and centered. And the main thing that I was seeing in there is trusting self, probably some imposter syndrome things going on in there, them being scared of the etheric realms, but that's because of programming, or maybe some beings that you've seen in your past incarnations that were spooky, okay, or you didn't have a great time with. That might even run deeper, right? But there's nothing that I saw that was like wild, right? And so this is where we have to use our intuition and discernment when we're watching other people's things too, that not everything applies to us. We need to we need to run that through our filter system and be like, okay, I don't feel like I have a lot of heavy, dense trauma that I'm still holding on to. I think you probably don't anyway, because your healing processes are very deep and very vast. And so, even unconsciously, you have been pulling from other facets of yourself from other incarnations to work these things out. Like you're very self aware, very mindful of your energy field, of your thought processes, of your behavioral patterns, of your triggers. So, like when I look in your field, I can see the cog running. Okay. There's not anything that we're kind of like turning a blind eye to necessarily. Like we're very aware of how everything works, right? So that's indicative. Sorry about this car alarm over here.
I
Um,
didn't hear anything.
oh, you can't hear it? Okay. Thank you for my microphone blessings. Okay. So, a very indicative of somebody who already has a lot of tools and resources and has been doing this for quite a while. This is not your first rodeo. So that's what I mean. Even if you have not consciously been healing your inner children like that, you unconsciously, you've already got the processes down. It would be a very hop, skip, and a jump for you to just be because I don't you aren't doing you do like past life regressions with anybody or like timeline healing or anything like that. It'd be like a hop, skip, and a jump for you to be able to do those things because you've been doing so much work with your inner children, whether you're aware or not. So, because when we do that with them, you can take the exact same applications and apply that to other people's timelines or even to your own timelines. It's easier to do when you heal your own inner children first because they're closer to your now experience, right? So you can actually teach yourself how to do Akasha work that way. So where are you feeling blocked in life? Where we have other than the spiritual perceptions? I don't even like to say blocked. Where are we feeling that we're working through? What's our challenges that we're working through right now?
The biggest challenge I'm working through is financial, which I know is not actually a financial thing. And so
Okay.
I'm getting deeper into like my own value and my own worth and
Mhm.
like recognizing that like I'm kind of the center of the onion and you have to get through these layers to like heal that. And also like you have to be okay seeing and hearing yourself before
Mhm.
other people can see and hear you fully.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's been a intense like self-worth and self-value journey, which is consistently coming up with financial stuff.
Okay. Yeah. See, we have a good understanding. That we've been digging. Okay. So tell me a little bit if you can remember, because these things are all interconnected for a reason. But what do you remember about being around 7 years old and 13 years old?
What grades are those?
7 years old, let's see, is like second grade, and then 13 is eighth grade.
Okay. So at 7, this has been in my energy field for a while, but it must have like really, really impacted me deeply. So in second grade specifically, I remember my teacher's son, I think it was her son or her husband was in a motorcycle accident and died. And
Oh,
she had a ton of trauma from that. And so as a teacher, she taught us that motorcycles are murder cycles and no one should ever ride one. And like, she obviously needed to work through something and shouldn't have been teaching that to second grade kids.
yes.
But that has come up numerous times. And I vividly remember that conversation because I was like, I mean, still to this day, I've never rode a motorcycle. Like, I've just had this weird, like, I don't have a lot of options to ride a motorcycle anyway, but I just like never had an interest in it. And I think it stems back to like, because I remember her talking about it really regularly. It wasn't just like a one-time thing. It was like over and over again about this murder cycle and don't ride motorcycles. I don't really remember much else from second grade other than that memory comes up.
Okay. And then, when these things come up and they just pop up like that, it's usually the inner children. They're like, "Hey, I need to tell you something."
Mhm.
Right? And then it's our job to figure out why things are correlated with one another. So great. Love that she said that. Okay. And then what was going on around eighth grade when you were about 13?
So funny enough, my boobs developed way faster than most people. So I'm 5'3" and I've been 5'3" since like fifth grade. So like fifth grade, I was a normal sized human, and then everyone kept growing except for
Same.
me.
I was like 5'2" since I was 12. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But then like my boobs like drastically developed. So it was in a time like seventh and eighth grade feels really challenging. I don't know for other people, but like it was this sense of like wanting to fit in, but I never really fit in. But I also didn't get picked on. Like I kind of flew under the radar.
Mhm.
But like then girls would be stuffing their bras and I was running cross country and I was like saran wrapping my chest. So like it wouldn't affect me when I was running. And
Mhm.
I was really excited to get to high school because everyone said high school would be better. Like I just did not enjoy eighth grade at all. And even in a recent training I did, I realized that like I've always had this deep sense of belonging, but I'm like wanting to belong, but I've never actually belonged. Like no matter where I try and fit in or what I try and do, or like I just something's just not right. Like I just don't fully belong completely.
Okay. So what I was hearing while you were talking about these two things is with the motorcycle, fears of the unknown and stepping outside of safety parameters, because I mean cars aren't safe, but like motorcycles are, like not a lot of people, I mean there are, but relatively a lot more people with cars. Okay. So fears of the unknown, especially things going fast, which I heard your higher self said that she was having a fear of acceleration from that, like an energetic scar. And I was like, okay, well, how does that apply to her fears of these beings? And one, fears of the unknown, right? And what could get us, but also her not, we'll say her not allowing you to accelerate at the pace that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. Because there's a fear of death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that's an example of how an inner child can interpret something differently than we would look back and see it as an adult, right? Okay, this thing goes fast and it hurts me and it's
Mm-hmm.
the unknown. Okay, so that can wrap up in spiritual things as well. Okay, and then with 13-year-old, what I heard was self-imposed restrictions is what your higher self said. What does that mean to you when I say self-imposed restrictions? Just in a general sense, not just with the chest, but just in general. Okay.
Um, well, it was funny because even when you were talking about the 7-year-old, like obviously it's me, but like I related to her so much because in that moment where she's scrunching her face and she wants it so bad, but she's like overcomplicating it, I
Yeah.
feel like that's the theme of every single thing I've ever done. So like I always want it so bad and I like will do anything to make it happen except like release and surrender and trust the process. So I
Yeah.
definitely know that I get in my own way with whatever is in my path and I make it turning molehills to mountains comes to mind, like
Mhm.
turning something small into something like monstrous where it's almost overwhelming and like stops me because I want to just give up or I want to just like not acknowledge it or I think it's too hard or I make up like some challenge about it.
No, I totally understand that. I even earlier today, I needed to record some videos for my mentorship, and I was getting in my head, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" Right? And I was like, "Okay, first of all, we're just gonna sit down in front of the camera and we're gonna start talking because we're not doing this anymore because it's been weeks of this, okay? And it'll come out however it needs to come out because whatever you plan that you're gonna say isn't even what you end up saying."
Mhm.
Okay, so we're just gonna do that. So I get that. Okay. Um, so why do you and making more complicated than it need to be is what I meant by that. But why do you feel like that you've had to put these self-imposed restrictions on yourself? Why do you think you have to make everything more of a challenge than it probably needs to be?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have to imagine it goes back to like not feeling worthy. So I make up a story which escalates to made up obstacles and challenges. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I can kind of see that with your spiritual gifts as well of in order for me to become the best, I have to put myself through the ringer.
Mm, mm,
It probably has to do with your finances as well, because it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to charge people money for this, I have to be top tier A1. Okay. Okay. So that might be some of the quote unquote blocks there as well, because healing works on a ladder system. Okay. So here's Alyssa, and here's all the people Alyssa is meant to help, right? If Alyssa is over here with tools and resources and expert, she can't help these people over here because your consciousness is so far removed from them, and your frequency and all the tools and resources that you have are not going to work for them because you have all of these millions of steps in between there, right? That they're not hearing, that they're not understanding. Okay. So you are meant to be helping whoever you are meant to be helping at whatever level that you are meant to be. And a lot of those people will come with you on that ascension ladder and continue to watch your content or book sessions with you or, whatever it is. But a lot of times you will shift entire groups of persons, and that's okay. But you're meant to help whoever you're meant to help at whatever time you are. Because if you're over here, you're not reaching a lot of people,
mm.
and you have to work with these people to push yourself forward on the accelerator. Okay, because you need contrast and comparison of like, oh yeah, that was me 6 months ago. Let me just give you those tools and resources so you can get to the 6 month me that I am now. If it's, oh, that was me 5 years ago, they're not going to understand what you're saying, especially with the rate of your conversion of like how quickly you move through things and shift through things. They're gonna have no clue what you're saying. Okay. Which that's fine if you're still posting for people like that or whatever you're choosing to do because it gives them something to reach up to. But you can't be on this perpetual hamster wheel of like, oh, I have to have more tools and resources to help people because it doesn't work like that, right? You're going to be out of reach and out of touch for them. Okay, so where do you think that first started? That unworthiness or needing to prove self, because that has a roots.
Um, I'm the oldest of four, and I can't pinpoint exactly where it started, but I've always just wanted to be the best. Like if I was gonna do something, and I guess growing up, like we were always told if you're gonna do something, do it right the first time. Like
Okay.
why waste your time, which makes sense.
Mm.
So I'm like realizing all of that now, but I've lived that my entire life, and if I put any energy, I always want to be like the best. Like I
Yes.
strive to like complete everything. And a lot of it was I was feeling worthy off of the words of valid or affirmation I would receive from hitting the certain levels. So
Yeah.
I would do that in order for someone to be like, "Oh, Alyssa's such a great student," you know.
Getting that
So I
dopamine hit.
did that. Yeah.
Okay. 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 So yeah, I could see if you were getting that programming as a child where it would be like, okay, well, I have to have all the tools and resources first. and then I can showcase my abilities and my talents, right? Like a perpetual and practice mode. Okay. So higher self is saying, do you think that you're an expert right now with where you're at in time and space with the tools and resources that you have for the persons that you're meant to be helping?
My immediate inside was like, no.
Okay. So why do we not think that?
But there's also a part of me that's like, yes, especially after everything that you explained. And there's nothing specific that I can pinpoint.
Of like
I
what you
think,
would do to like glean more in that area. You're like, no, I've hit my cap here, right? And not
yeah,
cap. I mean, there's always things we learn, but
right.
yeah.
And I guess I get in my head sometimes with imposter syndrome when I watch what other people can do versus how my gifts show up. And I feel like um sometimes I wish like, oh, well, I must have a block or something because I know that I'm a super powerful person. I know that I'm a
Mhm.
really powerful healer. I know that I can like be a conduit to really powerful energies. Um, but then I look at other people sometimes I'm like, oh, but like and I know everyone's gifts show up different, but like I don't know. I think I get in my head with watching what other people do versus what I do and what my sessions look like.
Oh, we all do that. I do that. I do that now. I look at other people's stuff and then I get in my head. I'm like, well, they can do this. And like, I got to figure out how they're doing that and all this stuff when that is not meant for me. I'm not meant to be doing that, right? I still do that though. So I get it. Okay. And sometimes we're doing that because we want to unfold new modalities or we want new ideas and all, but then sometimes it's coming from self-sabotaging behaviors and comparison that's not healthy. Okay. Right.
Yeah, I think ultimately I just really want my clients to feel really supported and have a really amazing time with me, which looking back, I have a ton of repeat clients for that reason. Like, and they've shared really great things, but like I want my word of mouth to build so much because it's like, oh, well, Alyssa like specifically did X, Y, and Z, but I never have anything specific that I do in a session. Like I never know how the session's gonna go, you know? So then I think sometimes like, oh, well, if something could go deeper or I could hear it more clearly or I could hear it
Mhm.
outside of my own voice, like they would have a different experience because it's not from me, it's coming from
Yes.
where like someone's just like puppeting me and I'm just using whatever they're saying to help this client opposed to human Alyssa who doesn't know any of these things, you know?
I do. Yeah. But you also have taken into account you have a lot of experiences. Like it is okay to also interject your own things into there as well. Okay. Because you're an expert in your own life.
Mhm.
And when I'm talking to other people's higher selves, their higher selves only one perspective.
Hmm.
Like, yes, they have a lot of, but they're also they're not person. Okay. But they're one perspective. Okay. And so are their spirit guides and things like that. Like you have just as much to offer from your incarnation as they do.
Hmm.
You are a guide, you are a spirit guide to them. Does that make sense? Okay. So yes, have those other channels running up here, but then also it's okay to utilize your own knowledge and wisdom. Don't discount that.
Mhm.
Cool. Okay. So
And even with that, like I do find that that comes up already. Like exactly what you were saying. Like someone's going through a weird experience that like I literally just went through, but it's just a weird thing where I'm like, oh, well, when I did it, like X, Y, and Z helped me, you know? But yeah, there's this
okay.
aspect of like I trust and surrender, and then like I get in my head and like overcomplicate it and get my own way, and then
Yeah.
I trust and surrender.
You have to envision too, their higher selves may have never experienced what they're coming to Alyssa for. They're not actually coming to get channeled from their higher self. They're actually coming to learn from Alyssa. Okay, so take that into account as well. Okay, because I know what you mean. They'll be coming with these wildly specific stories. I'm like, that was me 2 weeks ago. Like that literal thing that you went through. Okay, right. Okay, so with being able to help other persons, are you doing sessions where you are speaking with the other person like in real time, or are you doing remote healing where you're not meeting with the person? Like, what do sessions look like with you?
Most of the time they're in person. I prefer in person a lot.
And when you say in person, is that face to face on Zoom, or is that like actually like in person?
in person.
In
So
person.
you know, me with hands on their body.
Okay.
Um, I've had some hesitation around doing remote and virtual work, which is just a confidence thing. I know that I can do it and I have done it. I just do not advertise that I do it. I really like to be hands-on with the person. Um, yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes. Yes, kind of. Oh, your higher self wanted me to say something here. Okay. So what is the reason that you are okay, let me see how she wants me to word it. Are you wanting to work with people in real time because that's genuinely how you like to give healings? Or is there a fear matrix running of I don't think that my gifts are powerful enough to help people remotely?
The second one for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. Because like the ethers and the cosmos and the Akasha, that's all remote stuff too. Okay. Just because you're perceiving something through Zoom is the same thing as you going into somebody's Akasha field and reading stuff. Okay. Like you're still gonna like it has absolutely zero to do with Zoom or being in the room with somebody or whatever. And I agree with you that it's really cool to be able to do sessions with people and it does kind of enhance it as well, like being in somebody's like physical presence and everything. But you can have just as much power doing that if you say that you want it to happen that way. That's a mind game. Okay. Right. And sometimes your human is like, no, 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 I gotta do all these things. So what are the fears around that? Why are we not trusting our gifts to be able to do them? Because listen, your higher self's like, hey, we got a lot of money over here.
Right.
Okay, that we could be if you would just outreach your network.
Yeah, she's been pretty loud about that. And I'm just like, okay, but I have to wait till X, Y, or Z or something. I think my biggest fear, and I have a fear with this in session, but um like in person, but I think my biggest fear is that I'm gonna do this remote session and I'll have all of this like wonderful insight or feelings or whatever, and the person will literally feel nothing. And like, I guess I have that fear sometimes in person too, but I know that's never the case. And I know I should just trust it because it's exactly the same going the other
Mhm.
way. But yeah, I just feel like I never want people to feel like they wasted their money having me work with them.
Yes. Okay. So when you are having sessions, are you conversating with the other person or is it sending them healing energy? Or both. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you can have like a Reiki session where you're just like sending energy, you're not actually like conversating with people. So what does that look like?
With reflexology, which is more of a closed channel, even though I'm still pulling in that energy, usually the client has big emotional releases through the conversations that we're having while I'm working on their physical body. When I do Reiki sessions, I prefer the client doesn't talk at all so they can go into like a deeper state so I can just be the conduit for whatever they're allowing and receiving. And so they usually don't talk at all during the session. And then I am just really like I have my eyes closed most of the time and I'm just focused on my team. So clairsentience and claircognizance are my two biggest gifts. So I
Mhm.
really just allow to feel whatever I'm feeling in my body and then go there in their body or feel whatever I'm feeling that way. And then we'll talk about the session afterwards. But I'm usually not like specifically talking to anyone's higher self or having a full conversation. The conversations I have are usually with my team or like if their team comes in, but I can't really differentiate between who the support is necessarily. And a lot of it is they'll just show me like animals because I'm really connected to animals, and then I'll
Oh,
go and like pull the tarot
yeah, this is
card
what
or
animal, this is what
oracle
this animal
card.
means.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Okay. So your higher self wanted me to ask, why do you trust your human but not your multidimensional form? Because I saw you and you were looking at your hands and you're like, oh, I can feel this. I can feel it in my actual human. And she's like, why do you not trust me in here in the ethers that I can also do this work? So that's what she's meaning by, hey, you're just as powerful doing remote, but you're not trusting in the intangibility of your gifts. It's like your humans like, no, I have to feel it in order to blank, 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 right? So
Yes.
what comes up when we're saying that?
Like word for word what you described.
Okay.
Like
Yeah. Okay.
I have the tangible, and I know that because I've done remote work where I still do feel it in my body too. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know what it is, but I do like the tangible sensation that I'm experiencing during a session.
Why do you not think that that would also happen in a remote session? What? Okay, deeper question. Why do you not tell your body, I want to experience a session as viscerally as I would in person with somebody? And I want my magic to be felt within them as powerfully as it would be when we're in a session together in real time. Not real time, but like in real location. Like your higher self's like, why do we not think that we have that power to have it come out that way?
Because talking to yourself and asking yourself to have that is very simple, and I've never thought about it like
Simple be
that.
the answer. Okay. Simple be the answer. You're in charge of your body and your energy field. And you know, like the observer effect, you like dived into that. Okay. However strong you believe your magic is. If you say my sessions are as powerful, if not even more, on remote sessions, because it takes a different energy to be in a space with somebody physically. It takes a lot more energy as an energy healer to do that than to be on remote because you are having to utilize your actual physical senses to read this person's auric fields, and you're having to like mitigate all of these like emotions and stuff with your actual physical body. There's actually it's easier to do it remotely sometimes than it is because you're not having to use as much life force energy in your actual physical body being in somebody else's auric field in the real time. Does that make sense? Okay. So, yes, simple. Saying, hey, I want this to happen. Okay. And, okay. Let me see what your higher self is saying here. Okay. It would probably be very beneficial for you to have some practice sessions, even though you don't need them, okay? But some practice sessions with some more advanced energy healers who will give you feedback and will let you know and can give you some empowerment and some self-concept because that's fine. We need that sometimes, okay? So that way you can kind of say, okay, I am doing this correctly. Like this is working. Like I am able to do this, okay? So if you need practice people, I have a group of people that I can connect you with. You don't have to do that, okay, if you don't want to, but your higher self is like, this would probably help you.
So So I think that's funny because like I literally knew that before you were gonna say that, and
Yeah.
like ask her if she has people, you
Yes.
know?
I have,
And so
yes.
I think I have a hard time trusting it sometimes because it's just like a random thought, but I have a hard time. It's like a random, it's a random knowing, but it's like almost in my own voice. So but I don't hear anything. It's like a random Alyssa thought, but it's not actually my thought.
Yeah,
You know what
I
I mean?
do. Yeah, it's like a different perspective, a different reflection that you wouldn't normally like have or think, right? But it's still
Yeah,
coming
so
through in your
sometimes
own
I have a hard
voice.
time, like, differentiating that, and a lot of times I won't even know until I start arguing, and then I'm like, "Oh, who am
Right,
I?"
like, well, now it's obvious because we're
Yeah.
arguing with one another. Okay, right. Yeah. Okay. So, if you do want practice partners, let me know. You'll only really only need to do like 2 or 3 and then be like, "Oh, yeah, okay, this is super simple. Yeah, of course I can do this." Like, yeah, absolutely. But you also need to do it with people who are not I don't want to call it like regular people, but like random people because they're not going to give you the level of feedback that you need, right? Because the people that I would hook you up with would be like, okay, she needs to know what she is doing and is
Mhm.
able to do. Okay. But 2 or 3 sessions and then you'll be fine. With your hearing with your spiritual ears and your clear audience, um what was really beneficial for me was to ask spirit team, inner children, higher self, other people's spirit teams, inner children, higher selves. I need you all to speak to me in a different tone, a different personality, a different language than I would normally use, like use words that I normally wouldn't. I need you to talk in an accent. Anything that is going to make them distinctly different from you, but you have to ask them to do that. Otherwise, it's just like with anything, like you have to ask, and then they will start to do that. I hear everything through my voice, but because I set those parameters over my energy fields, everyone sounds different than me. And then I started to pick up on like, oh, that's higher self, that's inner children, that's the spirit guide, that's that spirit guide, right? So setting those parameters helps.
That's
Have you
really
done have you done that before?
no.
Okay, yeah, just say that over yourself, just like we talked about before. However you say your energy field works, that's how it works. You got to set the bar, kind of like with your remote sessions. Like they're as powerful, if not even more powerful, when I do this. Okay, right? So ask them all to speak differently. Your higher self, are you doing channeling sessions? Like
I want to.
your higher self's like, why are we not doing dots? Okay,
I want to. Like it's like
said,
a
why are we
thing
not?
that I want
Okay.
to.
Okay, because she was like, what are we doing here? Like, why are we not doing that? So why are we not doing that?
Because everyone I've ever talked to about channeling wants me to write it down, and I have some huge resistance to like sitting down and journaling.
Writing what down?
I don't know, like they say you just write and then like the channeling
No, but that's one form of channeling. Okay, that's okay. That's automatic writing channeling. You don't have to do that.
That like doesn't resonate. I just don't
Yeah,
love
don't do that.
it.
Like, you don't have to do that. That's just one. There's like a billion different types of channeling.
I
You could straight up channel spirit animals if you want to.
I
Like,
want to.
do
I
that.
totally want to verbally channel what's coming through me.
Yeah, okay. Well, you don't have to. Why have you put the self-imposed restriction on yourself again of, okay, well, if I don't write, then I'm not able to do it.
Because when you follow experts and they're telling you to do it.
Okay. Okay. Again, we need to trust in self a little bit more, and that we already know how to channel, and that we already have tools and resources, and we need to find something that is in congruence with what our soul is happy to do. Kind of like when you were listening to my videos and you're like, okay, well, obviously I have all these lost children inside of me. Okay. But your higher self is like, no. Okay. But then it's like that self-imposed restriction of like, oh no, well, she said, and so I got to, that's not for everybody. You got a discernment. This is not always applicable to me. Right. There's a lot of healers and mentors and teachers that I listen to that have great information that have nothing to do with me. Okay. Sometimes we're watching things to be a teacher for others though. So maybe you're watching my videos so that you can understand that information and then output it to somebody else. So not saying that it's not useful, but sometimes it's just not always applicable.
Yeah.
So if your body's like, I'm not writing, well, that's not for you then. Okay. So then we need to do a little bit more of a deep dive on, okay, what kind of channeling calls to me then? But not the issue with you. Okay. But because you are able to pull information from so many different places and spaces, but you're kind of blocking your own self right now. Okay. Your channeling is going to look very different from others, just like my channeling looks very different from the majority. I utilize like a million different things when I'm channeling, and there is no guidebook for that. There is nobody to tell me what I should and shouldn't be doing because it doesn't look like what other people are doing. So I've had to cultivate my own channeling modality with quantum and Reiki and records and inner child and all this other stuff and like modging it together. Okay. That's you too, though. But you're sitting here and saying, I have to have a frame by frame playbook to make sure I'm doing it right. So I'm not scamming people, which is not, you're not actually scamming people. You're like, I need to make sure that they're getting their money's worth or whatever. Okay. So your higher self wants me to ask, when have you ever had a conversation with somebody where it was not beneficial for them?
I mean, I feel like all of them are.
Okay. There's never not a time where somebody's going to be in your energy field and come away with something. Sometimes it's not about, okay. Sometimes I will have a hour and a half session with somebody and they only needed to hear one sentence from me. And it changes everything. And I always ask at the end of the sessions, what was your biggest takeaway? And it's always something that I didn't think that they would say. It's something I'm like, okay, well, I just said that in passing, like super quick. Like, you know what I mean? But it's we are helping them see things through different perspectives. We're not always the one that's supposed to be hardcore healing with them. Sometimes it's holding space, sometimes it's helping them feel loved, helping them feel seen, helping them hear that one thing that they need, helping empower them. It doesn't always have to be Alyssa grinding all of this stuff up for them and transmuting and alchemizing it. It's just conversation. It's just like you and me are having a conversation right now. I just channeled some stuff from your inner children and then we talked. And then I'm being led to share things that have happened with me and then things that your higher self are saying. Very easy. But sometimes you're getting wrapped up in modalities and tools and resources when you should be getting wrapped up. I'm a powerful energy healer. Period. And the session's going to go however the session goes. Are there some parameters I can set of like tools and resources and channeling beforehand and like whatever you want to do? Sure. But even if you came in with nothing, you can still help that person with zero preparation because you have been preparing for all the other incarnations you've been doing this. Okay. That's why you've been able to work through so much and haven't had to traverse so many things in this incarnation because you've already done so much like karmic clear out. Sometimes I can see in your field where you're comparing yourself to other people. We're like, well, I haven't been through all the things that they've been through. Okay, just maybe not in this incarnation. Maybe we chose to have an easier one this time because we've already been there and done that. Okay, right? So you have to trust yourself more to pull on those incarnations. It's not just you. You have like all these other beings of self that they've gone through their own stuff that you can channel from them as well. Okay, what comes up when I say that?
It's almost like comical to me because everything I've ever done, I've had to pioneer. Like everything has always been like, no one else is really doing this, or no one does this way, or whatever. So I don't know why I would think it's any different. Like if you look at any part of my life, I've always like pioneered and been way ahead of what other people are. Like people aren't at that level yet, you know? So like I kind of have to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it totally makes sense about having to do that with channeling too. Like, and changing the perspective around that.
Yeah, okay, so your higher self is saying, if you are doing things that are so vastly different from others, where's the barometer? What are you checking this against? Like you're what's the word she's saying? You are being ruthless with yourself of saying like, oh no, I have to compare myself and fit myself in this very small container of what other people are doing, which I get, I've done that before too. Okay, but fit myself in this very small container, but then at the same time, you're like, I can't be doing what they're doing. I need to be doing something vastly. So there's like a contradiction, right? So it's like, okay, well, if we're going to be a pioneer, we can't, we're never going to have something that we can compare ourselves to. It's not like a, which just for the example, okay. So if you have somebody that's wanting to do a Sui Reiki, okay. If they're just doing a Sui Reiki, it's easier to compare to somebody else that's doing a Sui Reiki, even though they're going to be able to do things differently from one another, but there's still like frameworks and parameters, right? You over here have got like 97 things going on. Okay. There's never going to be anything you can compare that to. Now you can compare your individualized modalities to different things, right? But that's not the type of sessions you're wanting to offer. I think that's even happening with your remote healing, like the Reiki that you're doing, you're probably already starting to try to pull away from that of like, okay, I need to incorporate a lot of other things in there, but you're making yourself stay in these like very specific frameworks, right? Okay. You could even do like when I'm doing sessions like this, I'm utilizing quantum healing and light language and Reiki and other different facets to read various versions of them, multidimensional versions and different levels of consciousness. And I'm pulling on different modalities for specific things, right? So even though I'm not doing this, okay, is happening in the ethers on the background. That's because I trust my energy body. And I allow my human physical senses to not have to be the ones doing this. Does that make sense? Okay. I let this go a long time ago. And we love that. And if that's what helps you or helps anybody, like do that. But there is a point where you can do so much more if you just allowed your energy body to take on more of that role for you. Like when you are doing channeling sessions, which you will. Okay. You can do Reiki, a whole Reiki session on somebody at the same time. Allow your energy body, your multidimensional self to do that while you're speaking to somebody. There's lots of times where I'm talking to you, not you, but a person, and I have somebody's energy body on a table in the ethers doing Reiki on them. Lots of different layers you can do. But what you're doing is like, I gotta do this one thing. Okay. Right. Okay. So
do that. Are you asking your higher self to take care of it? Are you like doing the split that we talked about? Like,
sometimes it's just whatever. It's whatever I need to do. Sometimes it's the bilocation. Sometimes I'm conscientiously aware of what's happening while I'm talking to you. Like I can see you, let's say, or somebody on the table, or I can see my higher self that's talking to somebody's inner children or their different team members while I'm here actually speaking to you. And sometimes I'm hearing the different conversations going on while I'm talking to you. Sometimes it's a whole completely separate thing over here, and I just let her do what she needs to do, or my spirit team. It is not something that I'm always conscientiously aware of, right? I am working with you, and I say, these are the things that I see that she needs. And then I let my higher self take over with the things that I cannot do on this plane because I'm speaking to your human. When I'm doing sessions with people, I have to speak to a human, and I also have to speak to a multidimensional form because a human has a lot more layers that need to be worked through. And I'm not able to do the multidimensional level work that I could do if I'm only focused on the human. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Which I love working with people's humans. And what's funny is not yours are kind of like flip-flopped, but most of the time we'll start with human stuff and then switch over into the multidimensional stuff towards the end of the session. Right. But if I can send a lot of that stuff up etherically, I can help the human a lot more. Right. So they can have a better stability in this now experience, but they're still getting a whole plethora of things back here. And then sometimes I have sessions with people, and it's just straight up multidimensional stuff, and we're like transcending languaging, and it's just vibes at that point, and we're just saying random words and stuff. And I'm like, you see me, you get me, and they're like, yeah, I understand. Okay, so with the practice partners, your higher self is saying, hey, this would be an opportune time for you to try out multiple gifts at one time. Of sending Reiki healing or whatever healing, and then also doing a bit of channeling. That would be a safe space and a great space to do that.
I think too, sometimes I put limits on myself because like I told you, I don't know who I'm interacting with all of the time. So like I either just know it or feel it, but I like can't tell you where it's coming from. So I don't know if it's like my team, my higher self, your higher self, like a random spirit guide that flew in for this. Like, and so I feel like sometimes without having that clarity, like it makes me like
yeah,
again,
like you don't know what you're doing, and then somebody's gonna be like, well, what spirit guide is it? And what's her name? And like all this stuff. Okay. So when I first started doing channeling like that, I would refer to it as their spirit team, and I would tell people they're just coming through as your spirit team as a whole.
Mm.
There was as I got deeper into channeling and I was able to differentiate where all this stuff is coming from and where, then I started to tell people, but I don't advertise myself as a spirit guide healer. Like there are people that specifically will search out and find their names and where they're from and do all these things, right? I say, I speak to your spirit team, your higher self, and your inner children.
Mm.
Now, if something else comes through, great. Just like with your dragon, that's a very specific version, right? But I would just say, I speak to your spirit team as a whole.
Mm.
You don't have to false advertise and you don't have to like get, concerned and say, they're not coming through with a name right now. They're coming through as your spirit team.
Mm.
Names are a very human thing. Okay. And sometimes people want to know these very specific things. That doesn't mean that they need to, though. And it also means that it doesn't mean to be you that's relaying that information either. Sometimes people are this is not everybody, okay? Sometimes people are wanting other people to give them the answers to things, and they're not going to go in and get that information themselves, and they're not learning how to do it themselves. Like if you want to learn how to hear what spirit guides that you have and what their names are and all these distinctions, it's not going to serve you for people to always be telling you yada yada yada.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I get it. Like just like with you, you're like, okay, well, what's her name? Because then it makes it more tangible. And then Zoe came through and all these different things. But I'm also not sitting here telling you 27 different people that are on your spirit team. Okay, because you are in the stage of needing to figure out all these differentiations, right? Okay, so you have to, as an energy healer practitioner, really trust in other people's higher selves and their spirit teams that they are going to give you the information that needs to come through. And if something doesn't come through, it's not supposed to. You are not the all-knowing. You are also not supposed to share everything with everybody. Sometimes I only get glimpses of, like, sometimes I will see a whole play out of somebody's incarnation. And then other times they'll be giving me a sentence. And I'm like, why are you not showing me the rest? Because that person's consciousness level is not where it needs to be to have that information relayed yet. Maybe I'm not the person to give them all of that. Maybe they're not doing their work and they want to give them a little snippet, so they'll come in themselves. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different reasons, but you're not meant to be the all-knowing and the all-seeing, the all-relayer.
Well, even with myself, like the reason I want the names is so I can specifically call on that energy opposed to, hey, random dragon. Like,
yeah.
But also like I want, because I know that I have a really huge team and I want to like really honor that too. Like I want to have the relationship where we're like best friends and like
Sure.
have that conversation, that connection and build that over time and not just be like, oh, hey, I need you for this. And then nothing, like I want it to be like a friendship kind of. But there's a lot of stuff where like even when I'm asking for more information or I'm asking like who it is or what it is, like I'm not getting it. So then I'll have all these like random sensations all over my body. And, like the clear audience with the frequency changes and the tones. I'm always just like, thank you, but I have no idea like what I'm supposed to do with this. And I kind of feel like they're calling me all the time and I just like leave my phone off the hook and I just like don't
This is
understand.
too much. I don't like. Okay. Well, let's talk about that before we finish up because it'll make it easier. Okay. One, we need to be asking them again to speak in different personalities and tones and accents or whatever. Okay. Even though you still might hear it in the same voice, you'll start to notice the differences. So I actually made this whole video earlier about this, which was so funny. So when I first started channeling and trying to work with my spirit guides, I couldn't see what they look like, couldn't hear them. What are your names? What are y'all doing? What do you can help me with? Like, all this stuff. So I got really discouraged because I'm like, oh, something's wrong. Something's broken, right? And all these other people can do this and I can't. Okay. So I said, I am going to create my own spirit team of whom I know who they are.
I think you sent me that video. I think I watched that.
Yes. Okay. So I picked Joan of Arc, Archangel Michael, Forrest, Kali, and Lord Ganesh. And the reason I picked them is because I did research about different spirit guides and what they help with. And I said, oh, those are things that I need help with in my life, right? And so I started to commune with them and start to build that relationship. And then that really helped me start to differentiate between different spirit guides, which opened up the channels for me to be able to hear my spirit guides on my team more clearly. Because now I have something to point my energy and attention at, and I know what they look like. Okay, I don't know worse than they look like, but there's tons of pictures online. And I was doing guided meditations and I was researching about them. I was asking them very specific questions: how, what, and why. Because if you give them a goal that you're trying to achieve, it points the energy a lot more fine-tunedly, and then they can give you a better response, right? You could, let's say that you have 3 spirit guides that you choose to be on your team. You could ask all 3 of them the same exact question and see what comes through. That will start to help your spiritual ears open up more channels of like, oh, okay, I see that these are different from one another. I see that they're coming through different levels of consciousness and different levels of understanding, and it really helps you see that even though it is through your own voice, completely different from one another. It's easier than just trying to figure out who all these etheric beings are. And like, what are you talking about? Who are you, right? And that's probably also when you have inner children in that are scared of things that they don't know, the unknown, or whatever, they're like, who are these people? I don't know them. Okay. Yeah, like, you're just asking me to talk to these beings, right? But if you find some spirit guides that have a lot of information about them in the collective and feel a lot safer, like Jesus. Like, I'm not saying it has to be Jesus, okay? But like Jesus, like there, or like an angel, like Archangel Michael or Mother Mary, or any of those things, a unicorn. Okay, or fairy, just something that's light vibrationally, they're going to be more likely to want to speak to that being as well, because there's safety in that. And if you double that with that internal realm and have them come to you in that space, view them as a human or a unicorn, an animal, right? But see them as a human. Look up an image on Pinterest or Google first. And let's say you want to work with Joan of Arc, look at it, and then ask her to come meet you in that internal space as a human. I mean, she is a human, but ask her to meet you in there with your dragon and with your kids and ask her those questions.
Okay.
Or ask all 3 of them to come at one time and then ask them those different questions.
So, should I focus more on creating my team and then building that way versus like when I'm having sensations in my body and wondering what the heck is going on?
Yeah, that's how I did it. That's how I did it. I would ask them specifically what's going on, because now I'm starting to build a relationship and I trusted them, and I was like, okay, well, obviously y'all have a lot of experience and perspectives and I trust you. And so even if you're not a super expert in this, like one of my spirit guides would be over here, I'm still going to be able to receive that information a lot easier because I trust you. I can see you. You still have good guidance and wisdom. You've been around for a long time, even though you might not be super expert in that. At least I can have like a reverberation back where I'll be more open to receiving that information. So like if you have a sensation in your arm, okay, you can ask Archangel Michael, hey, what's going on with this?
Okay.
And then he's going to give you a response.
Okay.
It's going to be through his flavor, though. So if you ask Joan of Arc or you ask Mother Mary or whomever, okay, it's going to come through in a different way. Okay. So that's why it's also important to find spirit guides to help you with certain things. The more specific that you can be, like Lord Ganesh, I asked him to help me with my finances. Horus, I asked him to help me with my psychic insight and being able to see. Kali, I asked her to help me with trauma and PTSD stuff. Joan of Arc with protection. Archangel Michael with kind of being a bouncer to etheric beings, like trying to come through my field, right? So finding different guides to help you with certain things is also beneficial.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So I would just pick like 2 or 3 people and start there.
Yeah, because that is like one of the most maddening things. Because I'll feel like all of it like on my head, and my head's super tingly, or I'll feel it like on my hands, or I feel like circles on my feet, or I hear like the frequency changes. I'm always like, how can I help you?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say that because you're a type of person that likes to like figure things out, like puzzles, logical, analytical, okay? Because we're always doing self-awareness checks. We need to be asking specific questions.
Okay.
Like the more specific, the better. That's to your higher self or your inner children as well. Like if we're just sitting here waiting for things to come through, it can literally be anything, right? So how, what, and why questions are best. Why is my arm feeling this way? Where is that coming from? How can I amplify this? How can I release this? Because maybe it's something that you're wanting to whatever. Okay. Those are self-discovery questions. Or even working with people, clients, when you're channeling how, what, and why questions. We're just helping them get to the root of things.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that, we're just trying to help them see themselves through different perspectives, trying to help them have their own aha moments, trying to help teach them how to do these self-discovery processes that we know how to do on self. We're trying to teach them that. And one of the ways you can do that is how, what, and why questions. You're teaching them how to heal themselves when you were going in with that intention.
Okay.
Instead of just having to like give them answers. No.
Mhm.
I need to help you figure out how to get your own answer. Just like when you and I were in this right here, and I'm asking you, like, well, where do you think that came from? You're having to dig back in your own subconscious instead of me just telling you the answer. Like, I can hear it from your higher self, but that's not actually going to be helping you to just be like, okay, well, here's yada, 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 yada. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay. What questions do you have before we finish up?
I don't know that I do have any questions. I feel like I asked everything that was coming up.
I think what you need to focus on right now is the trusting, the self-imposed restrictions, the comparison, also being okay with where you're at in life right now and being at peace with that and surrendering and letting go and saying, I am exactly who I need to be right now. Because when I saw what you were doing to your energy body, that was not good. The ripping trying to bust out. Okay, your children like that's scary, and I was like, I know. Okay, so they're like, hey, we're okay right now. You're more working on self concept stuff right now, not the PTSD and the trauma. I think that's probably what's tripping you up a little bit because you're like, I'm supposed to be working on PTSD trauma. Well, what if there's not a whole lot of stuff left? And it's just self-concept and seeing how far you come and how powerful you are and allowing your gifts to come in. Like, what if that's the actual chapter that you're in? Which also goes back to I'm exactly who I need to be in this moment. Right. Because you really have to adopt that. Because I get because we're so self-aware and wanting to improve, but that's a hamster wheel. That's like more, and asking so much of yourself where you could just be like, you know what? I am an expert where I'm at. I'm doing great. I'm living life. I'm thriving. And whatever comes on a day-to-day basis that I need to check, I'll do that. But what I'm not going to do is this whole demonization of self to propel myself.
Mm.
Because that's what's actually keeping you stuck in doing this.
Mhm.
Instead of just being like, I'm Gucci. Okay. Here in this time and space. Okay. Right? I've done all the work I need to, and now we're just working on self-concept. And I'm sure there'll be other trauma and PTSD stuff that comes up, because that's how it is. But that's not the chapter you're in. You're not in shadow work chapters right now. We're in self-concept chapters.
Mm.
But not self-concept from trauma, just working on confidence and stuff. Okay. Okay. What was your biggest takeaway today?
Um, that you should use discernment and not everything is for everyone. Like there was so much panic in me when you started talking about inner children stuff. Just watching it because it made sense, and then you're
Mhm.
looking back like, oh my gosh, like how many people told me something in my life where like that like set me on some path and like I just have never ever thought of it. But I'm glad that mostly they're super happy and thriving and doing their thing there.
Yeah, sometimes I give sessions to people. I'm like, oh, these are all the things we need to work on. Okay. Because they haven't been doing that work actively, right? But yours was just like, yeah, we're just scared of the ghosties. And she needs to stop trying to rip herself apart. Dang, what was your higher self going to say about the discernment? Okay. One, that lesson probably had to happen so that you could learn to, or that you could teach that to other people about the discernment thing, right? But at the same time, when you are getting pinged for certain things, but it doesn't feel in resonance with you, ask yourself, okay, does it not feel in resonance because I'm looking at this through a student lens and I actually need to be looking through a teacher lens because then it probably will resonate. I need to learn this for somebody else. And maybe not. Sometimes that's not even relevant too. But that might be like you're probably going to have people with inner child stuff. And so you listening to me is like, okay, well now I can pick up the tools and resources to just give to them, right? So ask yourself that next time as well.
Yeah, I think that was part of like why I was so hard on myself and like so devastated because I am really self-aware and I do like a ton of
Yeah.
self-development, evolution, healing. Like I know my energy better than anyone ever could, which is
Mhm.
what we are supposed to be doing. So like to have this whole aspect, I was like, oh, I've just had a blinder on to that. But that makes so much sense thinking about it as like maybe not super relevant to me, but probably people are coming down the pipeline that are going to have some inner children stuff that they need to love and support and hug and tell them how safe they are and how proud of them you are.
The reason you got triggered as well as what your higher self was saying is because of that wounding that you have with self-imposed restrictions. Like, if I didn't know this, and now I see it, well, then that has to be applicable to me. And now I have to go down this whole rabbit hole of PTSD and trauma and all these different things. And she's like, can we just look at something and just observe it? Okay. But it's that, okay, well, now here's another challenge that I can put in my way. So it wasn't actually the inner child stuff that was triggering you. It was actually the self-imposed restrictions wound that was triggering you of like, okay, another challenge. Okay. And it's like, actually, we don't actually really need to do that. Okay. Like we've already done that. So that's where that triggering stuff was coming from. Okay. So I'm gonna send you your oracle cards and your crystal grid, and then I will send you the replay either today or tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much
Okay.
for this. This was like more than I've ever wanted. And you're just so, so amazing. I was even telling my husband, like, no matter what you say, like you make people really feel loved and supported, even if
Oh,
it's not like me watching your videos with other people, it's just like, man, everything just feels like you just normalize and validate without actually doing those things. Like, and like it's the energy is so loving and supportive and intentional. And it's just really, really nurturing, healing energy. So thank you for everything that you do for everyone. The
you're
world.
so sweet. Thank you. I am receiving that into my heart space. I was making sure that my inner children and teens were listening to that because sometimes we get imposter syndrome. A lot of times, actually. Okay. And when people are giving us compliments and things like that, like it's kind of rolling over because I'm like, oh no, we can do this and work harder. And, just all the things that you're going through too. So when you were talking, I was like, I want y'all to listen to what Alyssa's saying right now. Okay. Okay. So I appreciate that. It was so incredibly kind and sweet. And thank you for reflecting that back to me. It is my ultimate goal to help people feel safe. Like that is the biggest thing, especially with inner children and teens and things of that nature. So I'm gonna try not to tear up right now, but that means a lot to me that is how I am being received because that is what I try and project at all times. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll get everything to you. And thank you for all that you are doing as well. and that you will be doing on a much bigger scale moving forward after today. Okay. And then remind me, I'm going to send you, we'll talk offline about getting you with some practice partners.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I hope you have a magical day. Bye.
Hope you do too. Bye.